And in the previous session, we left from this slide, and now we are continue from this slide. Um, First, I want to review this slide, and then we will. Hello, students. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, students. Assalamu alaikum. In the previous session, we left from this slide, and now we will continue from this slide. First, I want to review this slide in which we were discussed the methods of evaluating the communication methods. The first one is feedback. In this, actually, the feedback means how quickly we get the feedback from the receiver. And then we have complexity capacity, in which means which means that is the channel or medium can process the complex message or not. Then we have breadth potential. In breadth potential, actually, we are seeing or evaluating how many different type of messages can be transmitted through this medium. If we take the example of phone call, so phone is also the medium or channel of communication. So in the phone call, we can only make a call and type a message. But if we take the example of WhatsApp and Insta and Twitter, so on these apps, we can make a call, we can type a message, we can make a video call, and we can share the pictures, and we can go online. So every channel have their own range, their own breadth. So we choose the channel according to their range. What's our need for communicating the other person, and then we choose the channel according to our need and our suitability. Then we have confidentiality. Confidentiality is all about privacy. If the message we are sending getting by only the receiver or other person. So before selecting, we evaluate the confidentiality of the method, because in some communication, in some communication processes, the confidentiality is very vital and important. We must have to consider it, because it's so important to consider it. Without it, the news or the communication process will be leaked, so it will be harmful in many terms. Then we have encoding ease. Encoding ease is basically is the sender can encode easily by this channel or not. Decoding ease means is the receiver can decode the message easily or not. Then we have time space constraint. In this, we look, do the sender or the receiver can approach each other at the same time, at the same space, or there is a conflict of time and space. So it's so important, because if we take in some scenario, we have to consider this, because otherwise it will be disaster. For example, if anybody has accident, so he or she will not going to tax the relative, family, or loved one, or beloved to wait for response. He want the immediate response, so he make a call to approach the other person. So in some situation, the direct response and direct approach is very important. And in organization situation, we have so many day-to-day situation. We are facing this type of scenarios. Then we have cost. In this, we are analyze what the costs of using these medium. For example, if we take the example of organization, so if the organization want to tell their customer about the new product or want to advertise their product, so they must be evaluate the channel whether it will be cheaper or it will be costly for us. For example, if they take the if they take Insta, WhatsApp, and Twitter. So it's cheaper than if they go for the billboards and physical type of advertisements. So it's depend on the organization budget whether they have enough money to manage the cost of a specific channel or not. So the size of organization, the budget of organization, the goodwill of organization, all are the variables which conclude before selecting any channel, because cost is the very important factor in communication process. Interpersonal warmth. Interpersonal warmth means, do the sender and receiver comfortable by using this medium or not? Because the comfortability is the most important. If the sender and receiver are comfortable and feel friendly using the method, so they can communicate openly, they can share their idea, their feelings. So it's so important. Then we have formality. In formality, we have looked whether the channel have some formality or not. Every channel have some formality. If we take the example of phone, so we have to first purchase the same, then we have to register through the CNIC. And if we take the example of WhatsApp, so we have to do certain formality, for example register through numbers and write the email. So before choosing or before selecting any communication channel, we have to do some formalities, some sort of subscription, some sort of registration. If we sign up on the Facebook, so we have to put some information like our name, our gender, our status, our date of birth, phone number, email address. So we have to consider it before choosing the communication method. Then we have scannability. Scannability is all about whether the reader can read or understand the body of text or not. Because the 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 sole purpose of communicating is to get the message. If the receiver get the message, so the communication is efficient and effective. And if the receiver don't get the message, so it's useless communication. So before choosing it, we have to see it. Time consumption. How much time will consume by using this channel of communication? Whether it's take a lot of time or it's take the time which we have to consider it. How much time we have to wait for respond. If we email somebody, so it's take a little bit time because we have to wait for the response. But if we make a call, so we don't have to wait for respond. We get the instant feedback. So these are the evaluation before choosing any method. Then we have the next slides in which we have interpersonal communication, in which we will discuss the nonverbal and verbal communication. Nonverbal communication is basically the communication without word, in which we have sound, images, situational behavior, clothing, and physical surrounding. So every sound give us the different message. For example, if our phone rings, so we get the message that somebody is calling us. So we have to pick it and we have to respond it. And if someone on the car, so we get the message that the driver needs the space to drive. And if we get the ambulance horn, so we get the message that some patient is in the ambulance and he is serious. He or she want a space to go to the hospital. So this is some sort of warning for us. So every sound have a specific message. So it's the nonverbal communication. We get the message by sounds, and then we have images is also convey the message. For example, if we see the image of baby or some scenery, so we get the different message. We get some positive and some good feelings. But if we see the picture of some disaster, earthquake, so we get the different message. We have some negative loss, disaster type of message. Our mind are working that in this disaster must be some loss occurred. So this is the images we gave us the message. If we saw if we see the building of any company, it's also giving message to us. So sounds, images, these are giving the message to us. So these are all the example of and non-verbal communication. Situational behavior is all about we behave according to the situation. For example, if we are in the condolence of someone, so we are automatically feel some grief or some loss or some sad feelings. But if we are and we are behave in this way, we uh, we behave in this way because it's the situational behavior. And for example, if we are in some wedding, so we are automatically greeting everyone and feel happy, feel commitment, feel nourishment, uh, feel we have a positive feelings. And situational behavior is also convey meaning. For example, if we saw any situation, and the all are sitting in the meeting and discussing some important matters, so we get the message that we have to indulge ourselves seriously in this discussion, in this meeting. So we behave according to situation. Clothing is also convey the message. For example, if the individual wear the school uniform, so we get the message that he and she is must be going to school. And if the person is in the office clothes, so we get the message that he is working in some organization. The color, the fabric, uh, the size of the person clothes, all are giving us message about the personality of individual. Physical surrounding is also give the message about their status. If someone has big office, so we get the message that he must be on a good position or she must be on a good position. So we know about the status of individual by their physical surrounding. And body language, in body language we have so many things. The first one is gesture. And the gesture is basically if someone wave the hand, so we get the message that he is happy to see, or he or she must be saying goodbye. Facial expression is also give the message if someone is happy, if someone is angry, if someone is confused, what the situation of individual we get by the facial expression. If someone is smiling, so we get the message he must be happy, he must be feeling good, he must be or she must be feeling some good vibes. So and other movements and other body movements, if someone is walk confidently and he or she has a good posture, so we get that he is a confident person. So our gesture, our facial expression, and body movement all give us the message. Verbal intonation. Basically, the pitch of sound is also give the message. If someone has high pitch, so we get the different, we perceive it differently. And if someone have soft voice and low pitch, so we get it differently. For example, if during the meeting, some worker arise the question about some project, and the boss answer him softly and in a friendly way and in a welcome way, so the individual or the worker is encouraged to participate in the coming meeting. But if he do the vice versa and he answer abruptly, he answer in an abrasive way, so he discourage and he demotivate. He because he know if I will do it again, so maybe he maybe the boss or executive will be fired me. So there is fear because of the way of the person answer and the tone of, the words are same, but the tone affect the message. So the pitch of sound is also affect the message. So it's also the example of nonverbal communication. Then we have interpersonal communication barrier, in which we have so many things. The first one is filtering, second is emotional, and the third is informational overload, and the fourth is defensiveness, and then we have language and national culture. One by one we will discuss it in our slides. The first one is filtering. Filtering um, is something, um, we manipulate the information to make it more favorable to the boss, to the executive, to the CEO, because because after it maybe we will get appreciation, or maybe the boss don't like it. So it's depend on the culture and environment, and the top management. If the management support the filtering, so the employee and individual will do it more. But if he discourage it, so the individual will not do it. So it's totally depend on the organization culture, environment, and bosses working in the organization. So if the organization have more vertical levels, so there is a probability, there is a more chance of doing filtration. Then we have emotional emotions. Emotion is basically the state of anger, frustration, upset, excitement, happiness. So if we are under the influence of any emotion, so we are taking our division according to it. So we are unable to differentiate between the rational and irrational thinking. So it's also create the barrier in communication. Then we have information overload. Basically the information overload is that if the individual get a lot of information which exceed the individual capacity to process it, so it's also create barrier, it's also reduce the efficiency of communication. Because if it's happen, so the individual select the data randomly and make the guesses, and he don't give attention to every detail. So it's also decrease the effectiveness of communication. Then we have the defensiveness. If the individual feel defensive, so so he or she, um, if the individual feel threatened, so he or she behave defensively. For example, during the interview, if someone ask about the caste, religion, or some political questions, so the interviewee will be uncomfortable and he behave defensively. So as same in the organization, it's happened when the bosses behave in this way. So the employee or worker feel threatened and he or she respond defensively. So they are unable to achieve mutual understanding, and it's create the barrier, and it's reduce the effectiveness of communication between the persons or group or number of peoples. Then we have language. Basically language itself is also creating the trouble in communication, because everyone is belong to different background, different culture, and different social culture. So it's affect the communication process. In communication we have our in jargons. Jargon is basically the professional and experts language, which everyone is not able to get it. So we have to simplify our language to create to increase the effectiveness of communication. So it's also create barriers. National culture is also affect the communication, because every nation have their own culture. If we take the example of United States, so they support the individualistic, and if we take the example of Japanese, so they are encourage the collectiveness. So in United States they are communicate, they encourage formal communication like memos, emails, and reports, and more straight and direct communication. But in Japanese they are supporting the collective way of communication, like face to face communication. So it's also affect the communication process. So we can overcome these communication barrier, but it can cause trouble for us if we ignore it. So the next slide is overcoming the barrier to effective interpersonal communication. The first one is use feedback. Feedback clear our confusion and clear all the miscommunication. So the feedback is so important because we get the idea how the receiver perceive the language, perceive the communication. So we can correct it, we can clear the confusion, we can remove the misunderstanding. So it's the very important too. Then we have simplified language. um, Everyone have different language, and there are some jargon in language which create the trouble for some individuals and some workers. So we have to simplify our language so the individual and worker can get it. Listen actively. We have to listen actively. We have to pay attention. What we what the sender is want to say, what the sender intention, and what he want to clear. So we have to listen actively. And then we have constant emotion. um, we are human, so of course we all are experiencing some sort of emotions, sometimes happy, sometimes upset, sometimes confused, sometimes angry. So it's okay, we can feel in this way, but we can reduce the effect of, or we can change our emotion about certain things, about certain situation. We can take a break, we can drink a glass of water, we can change the location if we feel like this. So we can do this all thing, so we can constrain emotion, and after it we can take the more rational, more logical decisions. So then we have watch the nonverbal clues. In nonverbal clues, if we are indulged in communication, so we can observe what the receiver facial expression, what the gesture, what the body movement. So we can perceive whether he or she taking interest, or whether he or she taking my message or my intended message. And if we get any clue that he is confused or she is confused, so we can explain it, or we can ask for the response. So it's also decrease the barrier. And after considering these all points, we can increase the effectiveness of communication. So the next slide is active listening behavior. Active listening behavior, basically listening is the very difficult activity, because we are most of the time can talk, but listening is the exhausting thing to do. But if we listen actively, so there's so many things cleared in our mind. So the first thing is inactive listening is don't overtalk. We have to listen. We have to shut our mouth. We don't have to talk. We can give feedback after the sender complete their discussion, complete their message. Be empathetic. Be empathetic means we can we can um, uh, um, we can put ourselves in the situation of sender, so we can feel the actual thing which he or she feel about the message. Make eye contact. We can make eye contact. And So in this way, we create the closeness, and we we are attached, we are more attentive, so we get the message more accurately. And then we have to exhibit affirmative head nod and appropriate facial expression. We have to note our head and give a appropriate facial expression that the sender think that he or she is taking interest in my message, taking interest in my communication. Then we can ask the question if we have some confusion and we have some misunderstanding, and if we don't get the point of the receiver, so we can ask the question. Okay, avoid distraction, action, or gesture. We don't have to do things which distract the sender. For example, we have to put our phone aside, turn off the TV, and make the eye contact. So because these all things are creating distraction, and which lose the interest of communication. So it's so important. Paraphrase. After completing the one paragraph or one phrase, we can paraphrase it. We can repeat it. You mean this by this sentence. So it's also clear all the confusions and all misunderstanding. Avoid interpreting the speaker. We don't have to interpret the speaker, because um, then it's discontinue and the sender is distracted. So we first the sender have or speaker have to complete their sentence, then we can ask or we can paraphrase it. Okay, then we have the type of organizational communication, in which we have formal and informal communication. Basically, formal communication is the communication in which we follow the official chain of command. And the formal communication example is downward communication, upward communication, horizontal and lateral communication, and diagonal communication. And then we have informal communication, basically, which is not defined by is the communication that is not defined by the organization hierarchy. um, it, it's not in this communication, we are not following the official chain of command, basically. And permit employee to satisfy their social need. We can it satisfy the social need of employee of worker, and it is the faster and more effective way of communicating and channel of communication. And this is the diagram in which they explain how the communication flow. Upward is basically from lower level to upper level, and downward is basically from upper level to downward level, means managers to employee. And the diagonal is basically cross the areas and work areas and levels. And literal is basically the communication doing on the same level. So we will discuss in the coming slide more depthly. Then we have the direction of communication flow. The first one is downward. Basically, downward communication is the communication which flow from the manager to employee, to direct, coordinate, and evaluate the employee. Basically, to give some information, to give some orders, to give to inform the employee, to guide them, to order them. Basically, it's downward communication. The upward communication is the communication which the worker, which the employee, which flow from employee to manager. Basically, it's about the report, um, the manager and employee discussions, informal meetings, and suggestion box. These all are the example of upward communication, in which the employee, the worker, address their issues and problem with their managers, with their executive. For example, if we take the example of this type of communication, so we have so many examples, so I will discuss some of them. The first one is Michelle Berg is basically actress, and but she was working at some restaurant as a waitress. So basically, in every restaurant, when we have big tables, so we get the big tip. So every time during the work hours, the all servant fight for big table. So they get anger, they get frustrated. So the Michelle discussed this problem with their boss, and she told that he has to rotate the table. So the boss is agree with that. So this is the benefit of upward communication. If we discussed with our bosses, so it's solve our problem, our issues, which we are facing during the work. If we take the example of our university, so being a teacher, I'm your teacher, and you guys are my students. So you can address your concern, your problem, your issues which you are facing in these live session, or and assignments or projects. So you guys discuss with me, and then I will try to solve it, and we work on it. So this is the upward communication. So it's so beneficial, it's so good, but it's depend on the culture and environment of organization. If the organization uh, promote or encourage or appreciate the participation of worker, the participation of employee, so they participate more, and they participate more openly, more freely. And if we take the example of our department head, Sir Mudassir. So it's also he is the head, and we all teacher are under him. So uh, he asked for the timing slots in which we can conduct the class. So uh, we we discuss our problems, our availability, our issues with him, and he gave us relief, and arrange the timetable or organize the timetable according to consider every teacher. So this is the benefit of upward communication. In this, the employee feel more satisfied, more relaxed, and more happy with their bosses. Okay, then we have the lateral horizontal communication. Basically, lateral horizontal communication is the communication which occurred on the same level in the organization. It's save our time and facilitate us. Okay, cross functional team is the basically lateral and horizontal communication example, in which the different department people working for same goal. Different department people, for example, human resources, finance, production department, they all are working for the same goal. So it saves a lot of time. For example, if we take the example of nurse, in the nurse example, the day shift nurses come at 7:30 for half an hour meeting with the night nurse shift. So, and the night shift nurse left leave at 8:30, 8. So from 7:30 to 8, they have the half hour meeting to communicate, because it's so important to communicate, because we have to know about the situation of the patient. So this is the lateral communication. So it's also very beneficial. It's increase the efficiency. It's save the time. Diagonal communication is a communication that occurred across both areas and organizational level. Okay, in the interest of efficiency and effectiveness. So it's across the work area we can communicate in different work area and in organizational level. Then we have the type of communication network. The first one is chain. In chain, we are following the formal chain of command, and in which we have the upward and downward communication. And the second is wheel network. In wheel network communication is the communication which flow in and out through the leader to other in the group. Okay, so we have a leader and its flow and out through the groups. Okay, then we have all channel network. All channel network is the network in which communication flow freely among all members of the team. And, now we have the dramatical diagram representation of networks. The first one is chain and wheel and all channel. We There is the criteria for speed, accuracy, emergence of leader, and member satisfaction. In first, we are evaluate, or we are looking at the speed of every channel, every network. The first one is speed is moderate, because in this the speed is moderate because the communication is crossing different layers and different vertical levels, so it's decreased the speed of this channel. The wheel is fast because boss is directly approaching everyone, so it increased the speed of this channel or this network. Then we have all channel. All channel is also fast because everyone and anybody can approach and the other person or the receiver anytime and in any way. Okay, so it's also increased the speed of this network. Then we have accuracy, and in chain we have a high accuracy because they are following the proper chain of command, but it can be moderate because if we have to big organization or large scale communication. So in large organization we have more vertical levels and it crosses more levels, so it can filter and modify the message. So maybe it's a little bit, or maybe decrease the accuracy of message or communication. So then we have wheel. In wheel we have a high accuracy because boss is directly approaching everyone, so we get the message directly from the managers or executives. Then we have to in all communication channel is moderate because everyone is approaching everybody. Any sender can approach any receiver, so it's the free flow communication. So the accuracy is moderate because there is a chances of miscommunication and confusions. Okay, then we have emergence of leader. In the chain communication we have moderate emergence of leader because everyone is crossing the other level, the lower level crossing the mid level, and the middle level is approaching the high level. So there is a moderate chance of emerging a leaders. Then we have the wheel. In wheel we have a high level of emergence of leader because everyone is directly approach the boss, and if any individual, any employee, any worker has influential personality, influential idea, he or she is more active, so it's the possibility he or she become a leader. And we see, or we experience it's in so many organizations. Then we have the in all channel it's none because everyone is boss itself. Everyone is can approach anybody, any sender. Member satisfaction. In chain the member satisfaction is moderate because the lower level is not is it can directly approach the executive or boss, so it's decrease the satisfaction of lower level staff. So in wheel we have low the member satisfaction, because the employee and the member is can't communicate with each other. Everyone is directly communicate to CEO, to boss. So it's decreased the satisfactions of worker. And in all channels the satisfaction is high, because in this we have free communication, free flow of communication. So ultimately it result in more satisfaction, and member are more satisfied. And then we have the grapevine. Grapevine is basically the informal organizational communication, and in every organization it occurred because it inevitable to stop. Grapevine is basically the gossips and rumor and word of mouth, um, and it can be constructive and it can be destructive. It's depend. Okay, then we have the some point after the definition of grapevine. The first one is the provide a channel for issues not suitable for formal communication. Um, this is the channel uh, in which we are not doing the formal communication. Then we have the second one is in this informal communication we are more open and more honest in communicating with the receiver. And this is the third is gossips chain. One highly connected with individual, one highly connected individual share information with many other managers. So in gossip chain, the one individual highly communicate the message with many with numerous workers. And by contrast in cluster chain में जो क्या होता है, member numerous people simply tell a few of their friends, where many individual or number of individual tell to their friends or their close friends. So this is the grapevine communication. It's the fast and fast communication and efficient in some way. So sometimes it's really productive and constructive. The organization get so many benefits from it, and sometimes it's destructive. So it's totally depend. So basically, why it's occurred in organization. Basically, the employee want to know the truth. So in this to decrease the effect of grapevine, the boss or individual have to discuss or honest answered honestly or discussed openly. So in this way, employee are more connected with their bosses and the new updates and new things or new strategy and decisions. In so many organization, they made the suggestion box in which everyone is randomly or anonymously putting their gossips or things. So in one meeting they discussed it. uh, I think so net optic is the organization name in which they are following this. So it's a beneficial way of communicating is the more fast and more open way of communicating to sender. Then we have the information technology, in which we discuss the benefits. Information technology has so many benefits, as we know it. In this pandemic, we are also taking the benefit of technology. By using the technology, we are connected, we are communicating, we are delivering our message, we are getting information about their students, about their family, about their relatives, how they are doing, are they are safe or not. So it's so beneficial. Technology is so beneficial in many ways in organization or in our day-to-day life. So the first benefit is basically we can monitor the individual and team performance. So it's beneficial for organization. They can monitor the individual and the team performance. So after the evaluation of performance and individual, they can promote or demote he or she, and they can guide he or she, and they can do work on the performance, to work on improvement. So it's beneficial in this way. Better decision making based on more complete information. By using technology, we get more comprehensive information about certain situations, certain project. We do surveys, we do research. So it's convenient for us in making this. It's help us in making decision, and according and after this all work, we are able to take more sound and more logical and more better and more good decisions. And more collaboration and sharing information. We can collaborate with our employee, and we share information. So it's also beneficial. Greater accessibility to coworker. We can approach and we can access our employee, our worker. I'm sorry. At any space, um, at any space or at any time. So, greater accessibility is possible through communication. We can deliver our message anytime. We can approach our co-worker, our bosses anytime. So